is that the name of the episode? Because
Yes.
in a lot of social media circles, they don't post the name of the episode. Just yet.
It's The Long Night.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes.
That
It was
makes
a long
sense.
night.
It was a long night. It was a very dark night. Very
It was.
very
Very cloudy.
dark night.
Funny you mention that. Funny you mention that because I actually literally switched TVs halfway through the episode. My wife and I were watching it. We watched it this morning because we were passed out last night, but we watched it first thing this morning. And halfway through, I'm like, we need to adjust.
Should not be drinking into excess like that. That's. I mean, I don't condone it. Mike.
At 8 in the morning, we can drink however we want to.
No, I'm talking about in the night, so you get so messed up you can't even watch your social media requests.
I wish it was because of that. If it was because of that, life itself.
No, it's not because of your two kids. Stop blaming everything on your kids.
It's completely different. We actually adjusted the contrast and the colors to brighten it up. And then I said, you know what? This still looks like I'm watching this in non-HD. Let's go into the living room where I have a better TV and a bigger TV, and it wasn't better. It still wasn't better.
They just made it dark.
Yeah.
Okay. But don't you think that was before we even get into anything? Don't you think that was the purpose of it?
Yes.
So that you couldn't see anything and you felt claustrophobic and frustrated with
Yes.
Because I think if you saw armies of dead people running over buildings and hills and stabbing people, you like after a few minutes you'd be all right. Well, this is bad. Find some way to beat this. Yes, exactly.
Look, it added to the creepiness. It was deliberate. I think we can all agree on that. But to that same extent, it was definitely a detriment to us from a watching standpoint. I mean, they could have done this.
I mean, there's a significant social commentary to this, though, Michael, because while you're watching people, while you're sitting there watching people fight, literally fighting death, you're complaining about the contrast on your television. So that's the disparity between.
It's a good complaint.
That's the disparity between the privileged and the underprivileged. Some people have to fight the dead. And some people just complain about their television.
You do realize Game of Thrones is not real, right?
It's very real, Michael. We're talking about it. I had to run home just so I could talk to you about Game of Thrones. That makes it pretty darn real.
Why didn't you take a car or a cab or an Uber? Why would you literally physically run?
Another first world question. Why didn't I pay an exorbitant amount of money to travel home?
Were you actually running?
Well played. Well played. All right, Mike, you didn't kick this off because I actually reached out to Hassan this morning and I said, hey, we should probably do a recap of this because we're not going to be doing it this Wednesday because we're doing our live Avengers Endgame review episode live from Funny Business in Nyack, New York. We're going to have the Geek Vibe Nations ladies on as well. Everything's going to be great. It's going to be a great and amazing thing. Do not spoil Endgame. I still haven't seen it. Do not spoil it. Don't even tell me if it's good, bad, or indifferent. I've already heard too much. But I said, hey, we should probably do a Game of Thrones thing. And then you texted
Thanos
us.
is in it. Oh, spoiler.
Yes. Then you texted us and you said, oh, why would you tell me Thanos is in it? Damn it. It completely reshapes everything.
I'm sorry.
Then you're like, did anyone see last night's episode? Because you have a bone to pick with us. What is your bone?
I have a lot of bones to pick with it.
Go for it. Rant away.
Rant away. First, let me say that I love Game of Thrones. Fantastic series. I have watched the entire thing probably 4 or 5 times already, straight through. Episode all the way through.
Good man.
And yet, this latest episode, after I watched it last night, made me so angry. I'm laying in bed and I'm talking to myself. I'm like, just ranting over it was just
okay. Tell us why. What happened. What did they do to you?
I think this was the worst laid out battle plan that I have ever seen. They had I don't know how many strategists there. They had Jaime Lannister. They had Tyrion. They had everybody who had been in wars before.
Yeah.
Going up against the White Walkers. They knew exactly where they were coming from. They had all their troops lined up. Now you would think with 2 dragons, and the White Walkers are, going to get burned up by the dragon fire, that the dragons would have been their first line of defense. Fly in there, fly over the field, just light the entire thing up. Or at the very least, before they come, because they know they were coming soon, eventually, light that entire field up between where the White Walkers started and where Winterfell was, just line it with oil. And when they start walking forward, you just burn them all up. They did that in Braveheart. They did it
They never got to see Braveheart, though.
That's true. But they did it in the Battle of Blackwater Bay.
Right.
Where they just waited for them to come in and then light them all up. First of all, so that was just bad planning. I don't know who was.
Well, let me ask you a quick question before you continue your rant. Wasn't the whole idea to draw the Night King out? Like, didn't they kind of have to, in a way, let them get close in order to draw him out?
I don't think so. I mean, that would seem like a bad plan, because he can literally just sit back and do nothing.
Right.
The Night King could have just sat in the back of the ranks and just controlled them all.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have shown up whenever he wanted to. But because they knew that they had, 100,000 dead just waiting for them.
Yeah.
And they just kind of okay, we'll let them come. Oh, but no, they did send the Dothraki. Who, I don't know how many Dothraki there were. And it was one of the very cool visuals where you see all their swords light up. Yeah. And then you see them running across the field. And I'm like, okay, that's great. They literally sent them to die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no reason.
Dothraki haters going on there.
That
was your social message, Hassan, right there.
It was like telling the Night King, here you go, have some more troops that you can use, because these guys are not coming back. It was just a bad battle plan. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you wait? I mean, if the Dothraki are going to fight for you, why wouldn't you have them back closer to the gates to start, defending? They just let him go. It was and that part was like, okay, that's the beginning. Okay, battle plan. And then they did some cool stuff. The dragons came in and they burned some victims up. They burned the dead. But it just made me angry that they didn't have this planned out very well. That was the first.
Okay.
What was that?
No, I said that was point one. I'm waiting for Hassan. Hassan, you don't nearly overstep Mike as much as you overstep me. What's going on here?
I respect him. That's why.
Good point.
Oh, thank you, Hassan. That's nice of you to say.
Oh,
I don't think this show between Mike Fasolo and I is gonna work at all, and I'll explain, because I don't really disagree with anything you said just now.
Oh, there's more.
There's
more. You might disagree with it.
I know, but I mean.
Also, Ixnay on the announcement, Nay. We haven't announced Nay anything.
Yeah, well, whatever. Well, now that I accidentally mentioned it, and then you shed more light on it to tell me not to mention it. So that was both of us now. See, you're part of it. You're complicit.
Look, the 3 people that watch us is going to be like, spoiler, look, they're talking about a new show. That's all it takes in these day and age.
Just for the points that you made, yeah, I kind of see that. The problem with any of these shows is they're all written by writers who, 90% of the time haven't really been in any real strategic battle situations.
Are you crazy? I've killed like a dozen zombies in my day as part of gigantic battles.
And now you're just putting that out there for everybody to hear about it. So I mean,
the three people that watch us is going to be like,
they always have friends. They'll tell their friends,
and they'll be like, these guys, this awesome show I watch.
They kill zombies.
If they ever run into a zombie problem, they'll come and get you.
Ironically, I don't actually write any zombie books though. So go ahead.
I think the problem is one of those foreshadowing situations where, and I don't defend it. I'm not defending it at all. But it's one of those foreshadowing situations where 90% of the conversation in the last 2 seasons have been about, we don't have enough people in the North to defend the North. So if you did that, if you had, and the problem is it works both ways. If you had, because I would say you would put everybody inside the castle walls. So you would have the entire army inside the castle walls. You would have Jon and Daenerys outside with the dragons. And as the dead came up, they would set all the dead on fire. And then when the dead eventually overran the dragon position, they would be able to take off and then you would have the dead have to try to siege the castle, and then you'd have an exorbitant amount of people inside to help defend the walls. So, I mean, if the whole idea was just to hold out long enough until the Night King arrived, there was a better way to do it than to have your entire army outside the protective walls of your castle. But
it's also time to prepare, though, right? I mean, let's factor that in. I know Jon Snow has technically been preparing for a long time, but I know the previous episode, it seemed, once what's his name, the wildling guy comes back, he's like, Tord? I don't know these names. Yeah, Capital One guy. He basically said, like, we have no time, and it's like, oh crap! All right, we just got here. We just got everyone assembled here. I mean, it does take a while to fight a war and plan it out. So I think there's something that can be lent to it. It doesn't take away from the strategy being bad, but gives them a little like, well, you didn't have a long time to prepare for this.
They didn't have a super long time to prepare, but they did have time because they were preparing before Jon went to Dragonstone.
Right.
They had time to do that giant trench around all of Winterfell.
Right.
And all the
whatever we discussed here, the bottom line about it is that the goal was to reduce Dany's army to such an extent that Cersei was actually a threat.
Yes.
And so that was the entire goal of this episode.
Yes.
It's just to kill enough of Dany's forces that it's now going to look like hubris for her to decide to go after the Iron Throne.
Yes.
And I think that's the situation that the coming attractions for next week are trying to make it seem like she's got to be hell bent for leather, regardless of whether she should be or not.
Which is why this episode to me did, like, see, it's funny. I really enjoyed it. So I'll preface it by saying I really enjoyed it, but it also came across a little flat when all was said and done because, well, that's the butt sandwich, or butt face, as they used to say on Buffy. You have butt face. I liked it, but
the entire internet has butt face. So the whole world is all with the compliment sandwich, where you say something good and then you're about to say something bad, then you say something good again.
Yeah, I liked the episode. However, the build-up for 7 years for the White Walkers, Mike and I actually, before we got on, but we were talking, before you got on off air, was, and that's it. It's over. I mean, that's it. There's no nothing. And what I would have liked to have seen would have been two things. One would have been, I think, the confrontation between the White Walker, between the Night King and Bran. I feel like there could have been some sort of foot that could have dropped, that Bran, someone had the idea, and it was me, was that maybe, could he warg into a dragon? I mean, would that have actually been I think that would have been a cool, like, turning point, that Bran had to get the the Night King close enough, and then he could burn almost everyone. He could burn all of his compatriots, and then maybe Arya comes in for the kill at the end. I think would have been kind of a cooler notion at that point. But
there was a lot of stuff like that. That was another big thing for me when at the end just Arya comes leap, because he had his 9 generals.
I know.
He had the entire garden filled with White Walkers, and she literally leaps over and jumps on him.
I don't know where she came from.
And
they previously established in this particular episode with her in the library that she can kind of evade the dead. She's quiet enough to kind of slip away from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then the previous episode, 2 episodes. The first episode, 2 episodes ago, they had her sneak up on Jon in the Godswood. So they've tried to lay the groundwork for the fact that she can remain unseen when she wants to.
And she's in nature.
Yeah, she's in his nature. But still, when she just kills him that easily, this is the baddest guy in their land.
Right.
He's almost unstoppable, and which was very neat. I thought it was a great scene when Daenerys is on the dragon and she breathes dragon fire on him, and you're like, oh, he's dead. And he just comes out and he gives her a little smile, which was a little weird. He didn't need to smile, but it was great. You're like, okay, this guy is a badass. And Arya then jumps over him, pokes him in the stomach, and it's all over.
Right.
She poked him in the exact same point of his chest where the dragon glass was put in him to make him into the Night King in the first place.
That was in his chest.
Huh?
That was in his chest. They put the dragon glass in.
It wasn't. He didn't get poked in the stomach. He got poked right in the part with the part of his armor, and then he got poked with the Valyrian steel knife. So
yeah, right. At least to me, like he's better than his minions. He should. I'm not saying that Valyrian steel shouldn't have at least weakened him. Like that should have been his weakness. But one stab with it should not have killed him. It should have. I was expecting some giant battle where Jon comes in and maybe some of the other survivors, and they're all fighting this Night King to protect Bran. And they're each getting little stabs in here and there, but he's just kicking their asses. And then after he's weakened, have Arya come in and stab him or somebody cut his head off. But for her to leap over all the people, jump on him, drop the knife into her hand, poke him, and it's done. It's like if here's how I could relate it to. If you watched Infinity War.
Very good. Not Endgame.
Not Endgame.
Very good.
They have the big battle with Wakanda. They're fighting those space dogs. Everybody's winning. And then Thanos comes out. They got the main crew of the Avengers. Yeah. He comes through. Rocket walks up, shoots him in the head, and the movie's over. There would have been outrage that he was just killed that easily after he had gone through all this stuff to get already the 5 Infinity Stones. And at the end, he walks out, somebody shoots him in the head, and the game is done. And that's exactly what happened in this. This was a bad guy, supernatural, tough, and then boom, he's over. All his minions are dead, and that's the end of the White Walkers and the whole thing.
Yeah, and it came off a little flat for me also. Not in the moment. In the moment, it was kind of cool, but it did not have the same feeling as in other seasons, Battle of Blackwater being one of them.
Yeah.
Battle of the Bastards also, where they tried to do the same thing, which was kind of cool in the sense of the Battle of the Bastards, had that moment where they're all being like compressed and they're all being suffocated underneath the bodies themselves. And you're thinking, okay, all hope is lost. And then Sansa comes through and defeats them. And that's great. But it had that satisfying moment where it's like, we call it the cross the streams moment, where the foundation was kind of laid. The foundation was loosely laid in this particular case, but not within the episode, even if there was something where Arya, before they even come, maybe there's a secret way into that place, or there's something, you know what I mean? Something to where you would sit there and go, I know exactly how she snuck in there. And why all of a sudden, was it the plan? It wasn't the plan. He got in, and now all of a sudden, the name escapes me of the Lord of Light Witch, Melisandre, where she kind of comes in and gives a little pep talk to Arya, and all of a sudden Arya's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go kill the Night King now.
Yeah, like she knew exactly what to do at that moment.
Like that was the only thing. I liked Melisandre's arc the entire time, though.
Well, you can argue that she knew exactly where the Night King would be because she knew where Bran was.
You're right.
And so, you can also say that, in theory, and this is not me disagreeing with either of you.
Yeah.
You can also say, in theory, that she was kind of demoralized at that point.
Right.
And the Red Woman reminded her, like, you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to do something great here.
Right.
And so that kind of. I mean, look, there's 3 problems at work here, and it's not our fault. All 3 of them are not our fault. There's 3 problems at work here.
It's never our fault.
One of the problems is because of the nature of what we do. We are huge connoisseurs of this stuff. So we've seen all the tricks. We've seen every trick in the book, right? So we're actually arguing right now about which tricks would be better, because we didn't 100% agree with the tricks that they pulled. But
right.
We're not saying that there shouldn't have been any tricks. We're just saying they should have pulled better tricks. They should have
right.
They should have pulled tricks that would have actually tricked us. The other side of it is we're connoisseurs of this stuff. We're all writers, so we're all aspiring towards this kind of stuff. So not only that, we're analytically deciding what we would have done better, but we're only doing that in hindsight of what we've already given. So at the conceptual stage, we're still standing on shoulders in order to declare what would have been better, what would have been worse. And on the third level, the third thing that's not our fault really is that we're looking at the long term. What's the word? We're looking at the prosperity of what we watched, of the long term integrity of it, of the rewatchability of it. But I'll say personally, while I was watching it, I was extremely tense, and I wasn't busy thinking, oh, what you should have done, what you shouldn't have done. I was extremely in the moment, and I remember I haven't been as frustrated as I was watching Jon try to get through the courthouse, trying to get around Viserion, and try to get into the courthouse to help Bran, than I was watching that. So I found the show very effective. It wasn't perfect, absolutely, but it was effective enough to the point where I was satisfied that I got a spectacle. Now, that's not me saying you guys are wrong. You have to look at it through a different lens. I'm just saying that we're, these things, all these factors are kind of a disadvantage to us being able to thoroughly enjoy what we're seeing, because we're weighing all these different things in our heads as creators ourselves.
Yeah,
and as people who analyze things ourselves.
I mean, I can see that because, but all the other battles that I've watched for the show have been fantastic. I haven't seen one battle where I was like, they probably could have done that a little bit. If they would have done this or that. They all were spectacular, and they've all been great. But this one, it's just, to me, the ending of it was just very lame. Like, there was no satisfaction.
Very Hollywood. It was a very Hollywood. It was very Luke Skywalker in the Death Star ending. Like this guy with this one fighter plane is going to end the scourge to the entire galaxy with one pull of the trigger. And in that process, the 30 or 40 guys that died so that he could get all the way up to that point, are kind of washed away in that last throne room scene where he's getting a medal and they're celebrating him. But nobody's going to a funeral. You just lost your entire attack force. That is not technically a victory. So yeah, I mean, it does have that very Rocky and the last scene of Rocky kind of feel where, in spite of him having a swollen face and bleeding all over the place, they're playing the champion music and he's holding the belt up and and then two movies later he's got Parkinson's disease. So I mean we did have that. I mean, we don't know what the aftermath is going to be. We're going to have to wait till next week to see exactly. I'm sure there's going to be lingering consequences to this I'm just happy that certain people who everyone said were certain to die.
Yeah, we're going to get to this in a second now. So this is a great segue. Thank you, Hassan. You're a master of segue. Can we get into the hero shields? A lot of
plot armor.
A lot of the characters. Jaime Lannister needs to live because he's still got unfinished business with Cersei.
Yep.
I actually thought they were going to kill Tyrion down in the crypt, and I actually kind of thought to myself, I think it would have been.
Remember what I said last week?
And Sansa? I think both of them dying would have been epic.
Remember what I said last week? I said, I bet you no one's going to die, and everyone's going to be pissed that no one died.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'm the one who predicted it.
You had some.
Yeah, but I mean,
that was Hassan.
Yes, and Jorah and Theon. Yeah. I heard someone else say that Jorah and Theon were third stringers. And they killed off these third stringers. Wait a minute, huh?
Second string off the bench.
No, I mean, look, yes, if you want to rate it like that, but Jorah and Theon have been there since the pilot.
Absolutely, no.
They're not these guys. They're not like Lyanna Mormont, who had a great death, but we only met her like 3 years ago.
Yeah,
we've been watching Jorah and Theon for 8 years. And Theon, one of Theon's arc is one of the strongest arcs we've ever.
And it concluded right there, which was fantastic.
And then and he actually got his catharsis, because he got Bran to say, I forgive you, and thank you. So, I mean, Theon's the most valuable MVP for the whole season because he saved his sister. and then he tried to, and he died trying to save Bran. So I mean, he kind of pulled himself out. If you care about the stories, if you really care about the characters, there were some really satisfying outcomes or advances to the story that last night. If you care about the spectacle, and the fact that what you wanted to happen, the exaltation of what you wanted to happen or what you were expecting to happen from the build-up that they gave,
sure,
then yeah, I can see that being
that moment.
I can see some of these things being a little disappointing.
There were two moments where it would have made for, because here's the thing, right? We know these characters, where we think anyway these characters are going to die, right? We know
still could
that they still can. We want their deaths to be just like you mentioned, though, like epic, right?
Yeah.
Brienne of Tarth saving Jaime, dying right there would have been amazing because he knighted her. Would have been amazing. Sansa and Tyrion, while I would have been sad, the fact that it was such a curveball and the fact that they were down there because they couldn't fight, and if they died fighting to defend the women and children, also would have made for just an epic death. So I don't necessarily look at these as
I don't really agree.
As something that's bad that they didn't die, but I do look at it as missed opportunities for that epic.
I don't agree it's a missed opportunity until the show ends. If
Good
the
point.
show ends
Good point.
and nothing happened, then yeah, maybe some of these things were a missed opportunity where you could look at it and say this would have been a way better. Once you have all the facts in, then you
sure.
can say, yeah, this
I don't disagree with you in
this
this
would have been more
particular
useful.
case. Right.
But yeah, that would have been kind of amazing. But you have to think about it in the sense of what the actual event would have brought to the show, right? If you kill Sansa off after all that she went through to kind of, Sansa's basically the story arc for Sansa is that she's gotta establish the North. She's got to take care of the North. She says, I'm here for the North. She has a great scene with the Daenerys last episode about the North. If she goes and dies in the crypt, that doesn't really help her to fulfill.
No, right. Her story. Look, her story and Tyrion's story should continue in the narrative sense. But had it ended last night, I think it would have been it would have been a Game of Thrones like curveball.
Yes, right? Would have been a good satisfying.
It would have been every Game of Thrones curveball. And this is the difference, as I have always said, the difference between this and say ripoff shows like say the Walking Dead. Where people
they started. Walking Dead started first.
No. They didn't start killing people like this, like this until after Game of Thrones became famous for it. Because Walking Dead then decided to make killing off characters.
Let's see here. Hang on.
Google.
Go ahead. Keep talking while I Google.
However, and I'm talking about Walking Dead didn't start to get like gimmicky and weird until the end of season 2. So you're don't even think about the first year. I'm talking about the second year.
Fair enough.
But the point I'm trying to make is that whereas a lot of these deaths in Game of Thrones are curveballs, they're curveballs with a narrative residual. These things happen against the trope, but they didn't actually happen in detriment to the story. If something happened, it sends ripples throughout the story where certain things change and cause a lot of character movement. Whereas in some other shows, like the aforementioned Walking Dead, they're still in Georgia. They're still stuck where they are. It's just that, now they just killed off Glenn. But we're still dealing with this. I mean, nothing really moves. It's a lot of stagnation, and they're just playing off your sympathies for these particular characters. Whereas in Game of Thrones, they're playing off your expectations for the comfort fiction that you've been watching your entire life. So, you're supposed to follow, especially like Bran. Like I said last time, you follow Bran. He starts the show out. You're gonna be like, you're like, all right, as far as the fantasy trope is, this kid's gonna be, the kid he's gonna watch. Maybe he's gonna lose his dad. He's gonna lose a couple of things. And he's gonna grow up. He's gonna come back like a man. He's gonna be all stout-hearted. He's gonna come back and stab the bad guy at the end. And then he gets pushed out of a window. So it's like, oh, and then he's crippled. He's in a coma, and then he's crippled. But that is the catalyst to Catherine Stark going after Tyrion, because she believes that Tyrion not only pushed her son out the window, but also set an assassin to come finish her son off. So like I'm saying, there's a narrative residual. Catelyn Stark doing that started the conflict between the Starks and the Lannisters. The conflict between the Starks and the Lannisters got Ned Stark killed.
Right.
Ned Stark getting killed scattered the entire house of Stark. So there's always these branches. They always branch out. People don't just die without some kind of consequence. They don't die for the sake of the death of the weak. And so if Sansa died there, where would the story go from there? What narrative residual would we get from the death of Sansa Stark just right there, other than
that's the thing. Game of Thrones has been doing that for years, though. I mean, Robb Stark. You can go back all the way to him. I mean, his narrative has to reach a certain. His narrative wasn't over. No. His narrative was over. His story, his desires weren't over. He had plans past the wedding, but his narrative was over as far as all that he could accomplish, because they already gave him his do or don't moment before that, and he defied it, and then that was the consequence. Sansa hasn't had a do or don't moment. That's another thing. If he hadn't killed Great John Umber, and because of the Lannister kids being killed, if he hadn't done that, half his army wouldn't have left, and he wouldn't have had to go to the frays in the first place. Right.
And if he had not married the wife that he married, the Freys wouldn't have ambushed them and killed them for the slight. Right. So that he had his two do or don't moments, and so his story was over as a narrative, as informative to the narrative. Sansa hasn't really had her do or don't moments. She hasn't established her house as she hasn't established the protection of the North and reestablished House Stark as the pinnacle of the North yet, because she's still got Dany to deal with. She's still got that particular situation to deal with. She's still got her brothers, her brothers' divided loyalties as far as she's concerned to deal with. There's still narrative responsibility for her. So if they killed her off with those threads dangling, that would have been that would have definitely been irresponsible to the story. Just for the moment of, ooh, I didn't see that coming. Darn you, Game of Thrones. Everybody who died has died and the catalyst of them dying has elevated the story to another level. If Sansa had died right there, it would have just been for the evening for us to go ooh, and then they would have done nothing else with it.
That we know of, because you also have the entire conversation that you alluded to between Daenerys and her, and when Daenerys pulls away.
Stop saying Daenerys.
Daenerys.
Say it right. Don't be one of these internet idiots that talk about this show and doesn't get the names right.
I butcher names regularly. That's exactly what I do. All right, Mike, give me your final answer, because as usual, Hassan is completely wrong.
That's you foreshadowing. You've been foreshadowing the last 2 years of getting everyone's name wrong. So you're allowed to get Daenerys' name wrong. Okay, I take it back.
Mike, give me your final rant.
Oh, well, there's plenty. I mean, just about the whole battle. I mean, my big rant was the end of it with the Night King. I mean, I had other
the White King. I watched a completely different movie.
The King. Yeah,
that's socially relevant. Go ahead.
The whole battle scene, one of when the White Walkers were climbing up over the walls, you didn't see one rock being thrown down at them. You didn't see any boiling oil, anything on fire. It's like these people had plans that they knew were going to happen, and yet it's like they just kind of let it all happen. They let the White Walkers come in. They knew it was going to be there. They didn't plan for it very well. And it was just, to me, it was a bad battle plan, at least for that. And then, do
you think you would have been more satisfied had they, had the White Walkers the attack had been a surprise attack and they didn't leave it as a cliffhanger last episode?
It may have helped.
like they were in the middle of a meeting or something like that, and the White Walkers just come storming through the doors, and now
then
they
I'm like,
have
okay, they're unprepared for this.
right, and then it looks like more of a disaster because they just got caught off guard.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I also didn't like the death of the red woman,
Melisandre. See, I got the name.
she had a good story. You know, she comes out, she's there, she lights the Dothraki's swords on fire, sends them into their battle, and then since they can't light the torches or the moat, whatever it was, she has to go out and do it. And she's there, and she's, first of all, the most dramatic walk out to the things in the middle of this battle. It's like she's not running out there. They're not, helping her out there. She's not even fast walking. She's strolling out into the middle of this battle to light this thing on fire. And I thought her death would have been good. Maybe it ties into what Hassan was saying before, but I thought her death would have been much better.
No, she's her story responsibilities are kind of over. So yeah, if they killed her right there, that would have made a little more sense than going for that weird.
Yeah, I like the weird
Return
ending
of the King,
because there was kind of a cathartic moment at the end where you kind of felt, and this is going to excuse the writers, and this is going to excuse all the stuff that we actually just talked about, that she kind of all saw that coming and kind of knew how that was supposed to play out. So it again, it's one of those like forgiveness stones where you kind of like, oh, well, I guess the whole time Bran knew that Arya was going to kill him, and this whole time, the Red Lady knew that this was going to happen and it was going to unfold this way, and this is why it had to unfold this way.
I think it would have been more redemptive, though, for her if she had gotten killed in that particular scene, as opposed to her dying by her own terms, like killing you, because she, they made a point of her telling Davos, like, you don't have to kill me, I'll be dead, before the, and so it seems like it would have made more sense if she got killed in the battle. Yeah,
like she lights the fire, a couple of zombies get her, a couple of White Walkers jump over it.
Yeah, and then she falls in the fire. She falls in her own fire. That would have been. That would have been.
But yeah, her just walking out, taking the necklace off. She turns old and she falls into the snow. I was like, why even bother showing that? It was just a lame end. She was a good character, and it was a lame ending just for her to die that way.
I agree. I think also if they had done it that way, if they had killed her off that way, it would have been another. It would have been another ring, like a battle ring for the battle. Like it would have been another major character death for that battle as a consequence of that battle, as opposed to her just kind of, because I mean she could have just gone home. She could have gone back to Jersey after that. I mean, you don't know where she's going.
Why do you just assume she's from Jersey? I don't disagree with you. But why do you assume that?
Because all creepy witches are from Jersey. When she takes her tiara off, and then she, if she had kept it on, theoretically, she might have stayed Melisandre. She might have stayed up in her youthful appearance. So she could have just gone home after that. So I don't know. It seems like that was, I kind of agree, that was kind of wasted, because if she came there for the battle specifically, against the request of Jon Snow, who told her not to come back, against the threat of being murdered for Davos, who told her not to come back, against the advice of Varys, who told her not to come back. You figure she would come back to get killed, not to come back and fade away.
Yeah.
Actually, the way you describe that, it makes it even more powerful in that respect, that she basically came back against all those wishes and advice, and then understood that her time was up. I don't know. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of the
I think it would have. Walk. I'm just saying, yeah. I mean, it wasn't bad. There's nothing. It wasn't really a terrible scene. I'm just saying it would have been more of a dramatic. If we were talking about dramatic beats, it would have been more of a dramatic beat that the battle is where she died.
Sure.
Yeah. If she had died fighting for Winterfell.
Sure.
Yeah, because you get the impression that on that particular day, even if she was in Essos or Bravos, she would have taken the tiara off and died anyway, So if the fact that she was going to die should have been hinged on she came to the castle to die in the battle, not to come to the castle to decide to die.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, she also seemed like she knew the future. She knew all of this stuff, what was going to happen.
Yeah, but I mean, Arya. It doesn't explain why she knew she had to kill herself.
Yeah, but it also doesn't
revealed.
explain why she didn't know Stannis was going to not be
Sure.
that she had wanted.
Yeah, well, she said prophecies are tricky things.
And it might have came to her. Right, it might have came to her while she was out. I mean, that's the other thing too. The Lord of the Light, communicates in different ways. All right, we had a blast. If you enjoyed Mike and Hassan ranting, stay tuned. As Hassan alluded to, we're going to announce the formation of Hammer, which is Hassan and Mike rant. But I just came up with a great format for the show while we were doing this. They have no idea what it is. It's going to be amazing. It's going to pit them against each other.
Oh boy,
best man's going to win. If you are around,
what's men? We're gonna be two boys like arguing about movies. There's no men on it.
If you're around May 1st and want to tune in live, we will be broadcasting live from Funny Business in Nyack, New York, Main Street. Come on down. We got a studio audience. We got chairs. At least that's basically the extent of our studio audience. We have chairs that you can sit. We're going to be doing our Avengers Endgame review roundtable with the Geek Vibe Nations ladies. Try saying that five times fast. And we're going to do some Avengers trivia as well to go along with it. It'll be a fun night. I'll probably bring beer. It'll be a great time. If you cannot make it in person, tune in live, 8 p.m. Eastern. Go to SireDigital.com. That's our Sire Digital Network, which comprises YouTube.com/Secrets of the Sire, Twitch.tv/Secrets of the Sire, Facebook.com/Secrets of the Sire, and you can follow us on Twitter at Sire Studios, Sire _studio. That'll be that for a second.
Get it right.
Alrighty, folks. We will see you Wednesday.